Hey, what's up, guys? You might have seen a lot of people, including Tesla fans, excited and talking about how GM and Ford are partnering with Tesla to use Tesla's NACS connectors in their cars. And you might be wondering what's the big deal. You might be wondering why everyone's talking about it. So let's talk about it. Let's start by quickly breaking down what these headlines you might have seen are actually talking about. For example, let's take this article from Clean Technica. How GM and Ford joining the Tesla charging network accelerate electric vehicle adoption. And let's kind of start at the beginning. Let's go over more of the basics. First thing to note is basically the two main connectors that are being used, or the two standards, if you want to call it that, that everyone's using. So we have the two chargers. So you can kind of see here in this picture from Google Images, the bigger one is the CCS connector. That's kind of like the standard default one. We'll get into more of that a little bit later. And then the smaller one, that's that NACS charger that Tesla uses. That's the one that everyone's talking about, how it's a big deal that these two, pretty much the biggest car manufacturers in the based on the United States, are switching over, that are partnering with Tesla. Again, this is Tesla's connector. It's the one that they've always been using, and we're talking about it to see if it's better or not. Tesla always having the idea of making EVs as easy to use for the customers' lives, to make the transition from gas or ICE cars over to electric cars. Wants to make every single process, every single detail of owning an electric car as easy as possible, and make it at least just as easy to use or as nice to use as an ICE car, if not better, if not easier. That's the ultimate goal. So them knowing that you don't want a big charger, you don't want a big port, as you can see from the big CCS connector. You want to make it easy, so this cable and port, smaller, lighter, so much easier to plug in, and that was the goal from the beginning, while still giving you enough power to charge as fast as you possibly can. Again, just making the whole process of owning an AV as simple as possible. Long story short, because of Electrify America, and we might have to make another video about that, but because of Electrify America, they use this CCS port slash charger slash cable. Trying to break it down as quickly as possible. Electrify America comes from Volkswagen. They were fined because of Dieselgate. They were doing some illegal stuff with the emissions of their cars, so they were forced to make up for it by starting this sub company, Electrify America, of charging ports. Obviously, this didn't come from their own will. They didn't do it because they thought it was the best use of their money, or because they wanted to, quite honestly. And so it's easy to say that they did not put their best engineers, they did not have this as a priority in their company. It's easy to say they did pretty much the bare minimum of what they had to do. So this bigger design, obviously less efficient, bigger, not as easy to use. It's just if someone made you do something that you had to do, and you did the bare minimum, as opposed to Tesla only having electric cars, wanting to do the best that they possibly can, of course, with great engineers and having a passion. They actually put a lot of thought, resources, and truly cared about making this smaller charger. Now, most automakers, because they were kind of forced to try to catch up to Tesla, and come out with cars ASAP, not having too much time to think about or to maximize every single part of it. They just used, okay, for, well, most car manufacturers, because they were so far behind and trying to catch up and just trying to put out some car models out for sale, even if they weren't the best that they would normally put out, that they normally would spend time designing, engineering, etc. Um, decided to put or decided to install CCS connectors on other cars. One, because that's was what was already available in America. The Electrify America ports all use CCS. A lot of charging stations use CCS, but also because again, the only other company using this NACS, the company that created it, invented it, was Tesla, and they don't want to. They don't want to give in. They didn't want to give in, and kind of admit that Tesla was right. It's similar. Think about it. Android versus iPhone. Android wouldn't want to use a Lightning connector because that's kind of associated with the Apple brand. So it's kind of like saying, hey, Apple's better. And as we know, those two, their main competitors, they're clashing. They're the two biggest phone manufacturers. So you don't want to start admitting and saying that certain parts of that other brand is better than yours, because you start admitting that maybe you should be buying that other brand. Obviously not competitive, obviously not the smartest business move. Now that Tesla has such a insane lead with the amount of charging stations that they have, the amount of how reliable the charging stations are, Ford and GM have essentially been forced, and not forced in this way where Tesla's strong arming them, mostly forcing that Tesla is so far better in building these stations that those two manufacturers, GM and Ford, would actually probably lose sales to Tesla based just on the charging network if they weren't able to access all the charging stations that Tesla has. It would be a very big disadvantage, because again, Electrify America stations, I might make another video about it, they're very unreliable. Every time you go to connect it to it, there's a very high chance that station itself will not be working. And I mean, just think about it, like if you went to a gas pump and there's a 50% chance that whole station doesn't work, or at least half of the station doesn't work, so then you have to drive to another one. It would be very inconvenient. It would make life a whole lot harder and a lot more trouble than it's worth. Whereas if you know a certain station has pretty much all their pumps running perfectly fine, easy to use, no problem, no lines all the time, you would obviously choose that one any day of the week. So it was a big difference. It's that big of a difference where GM and Ford, the consequences for them not having the NACS adapter are so much greater than them partnering with Tesla. Now, let's get to the bigger picture on why this is great for the industry as a whole, but also why it's great for Tesla specifically. Why it's so important in making electric cars really the better option, just flat out, no and ifs and or buts, none of that, is that now GM Ford have pretty much said that all their new model cars are gonna start being made with this charging standard. So this means that there's gonna be less complexity in terms of building the cars. You're not gonna have to worry too much about again, whether you buy an Android or an iPhone, doesn't matter. It's going to come with the same charging station. So whatever car you buy, you're going to be able to charge it the same. This is a big deal because currently in your ICE cars, in your gas cars, when you go to the pump, you don't have different nozzles, different sizes, etc. You know, it's all the same nozzle, so everything will fit into into your car, no matter what kind of brand car you drive. So this gets us closer to making electric cars just as easy to use as gas cars currently. You're not gonna have to worry about doing research on what kind of port your car comes with, and what port that's compatible with what charging station. You're not gonna have to worry about spending a lot of money on buying different adapters, you know, connectors, etc. It's just gonna make life that much easier for electric car owners. Now, of course, this said is just the start. This does kind of assume that every other car manufacturer kind of also has to use them, right? Just because Tesla, Ford, GM are saying that they're going to be ones using, even though they are the biggest car manufacturers in the United States, um, that might not be enough depending on how many other brands, right? So, having said that, let's take a look at this. You have Rivian, of course, very small compared to those two, but they're ramping up and they might be another big player in the years to come. Put out a poll on their website: should Rivian switch to Tesla's NACS charging plugs? A majority said yes, 77% said yes. Again, it's just better, so that's another player. And then days after that, GM and Ford headlines, then you see Stellantis, another big player with a Ram, with their new electric cars, saying that it is considering it. So it does seem like this is going to be the charging standard overall, at least for the United States, North America. And as time goes on, it might take a little bit longer, but maybe for the world. Again, just makes it easier, less complexity. All right. So another part of this has to do with two parts, actually, and they both have to do with data. The first part is that in order for GM and Ford to be able to charge at Tesla charging stations, they're going to have to download the Tesla app. As you can see here, can I charge my Ford electric vehicle at a Tesla supercharger? Payment for non-Tesla supercharging requires your smartphone and must be completed through the Tesla app. So that means slowly but surely, like we talked about earlier, if most, if not all, car manufacturers decide to use Tesla charging network because it's the biggest, it's the best, they're all gonna have to download the Tesla app. Tesla's gonna be able to collect data. Right now, it's still unclear on how exactly Tesla might use that data. It's the smaller of the two parts of this. The second part is software, and we're gonna get to that in a little bit. But again, Tesla, probably one of the best, if not the best company in the world in being able to collect data and use that data effectively for whatever it may be. For example, right now they do a good job in using the data from Tesla cars to be able to preheat the battery before a Tesla pulls into the charger, to know which stations are half full. I mean, again, just like with everything, they're trying to make it better with the pump. I mean, imagine in your car, every time you search for a gas station on Google Maps, it's able to tell you, hey, you're actually going to have access to this many stations, exactly which pump it's going to be available, roughly how long it's going to take you to charge, and have, you know, your car prepped and ready. So as soon as you pull in, it's ready to go. Again, they're trying to look at every single detail that it, of course, in this aspect we're talking about charging, but just in general throughout their whole business, and how they can make it as easy, as simple, and as carefree as possible. And that data is going to help. They already have great data with their own Tesla cars, and now if essentially every other car manufacturer joins and using the Tesla app, they're going to have data not just for their own cars, but essentially for the entire car market, which is a big deal. Now, so having said that, that being a big deal, um, the more important part is going to be the software. That's we also don't know too much on how that's going to work. Again, right now, um, Tesla cars have their own software, Tesla software, that's able to prepare the car to be ready for the fastest charging possible once you arrive. So the car knows, hey, you're gonna arrive at station A in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever that is. We're gonna start heating up or preparing the battery, however minutes in advance, so that would when you come in, you have the best possible charging curve. Uh, Long story short, if you don't know, just like charging your phone, depending on how much range or how much percentage of the battery you have left and the temperature of the battery, um, it takes different amount of time to charge to a specific percentage. So, for example, if you're, you know, about over 70% battery charge, it's gonna take a lot longer to charge that rest of the 30% if you wanted to go up to 100, which is not advisable. Now, if you're down closer to less than 10%, it's going to be faster to charge that battery up to 70, 80%. That's just the way electrons work. That's just the way the electric cars work. Same thing with the temperature. Both ways. If the battery's too hot, obviously that's not safe. Charging is going to have to slow down to not overheat the battery and not damage it. Likewise, if it's too cold, if it's really, really, really too cold, the battery has to warm up essentially in order to have the fastest possible charging. And to kind of end it, the big point is how deep is are all these other car manufacturers going to go in terms of the software. Right now, they don't write their own software. They don't have that ability to talk to Tesla chargers, to give them all the info on the battery and the car itself, to prep it, to maximize for that. So, will they have to license Tesla software to install into their cars in order to have all that ability to maximize the whole point of joining the supercharger network, to take full advantage of that network? And like we know, when it comes to Tesla, everything's connected, so little steps like this, other car manufacturers joining the network, then it's connected not only physically to the port, but it's also connected to the app, which collects data, which is also connected then to the software, which collects data, and then that software, if you're going to license software for charging at some point, just like this, where these big manufacturers kind of had to give in and say, hey, Tesla's charging network is a lot better than Electrify America. We don't even have our own network. So in order to give our customers the best possible experience, we have to go with Tesla chargers. At some point with full self-driving, once, even though to a lot of us fans or people that follow Tesla, we already know that full self-driving is already years, crazy amount ahead of all these driver assistant packages, Blue Cruise from Ford, etc. At some point, they're also going to have to give in and say, yes, Tesla's full self-driving so much better. We cannot justify not including it in our cars to give our customers the best experience. And of course, Tesla has said they're open to licensing out software, full self-driving, and those are just so many avenues of revenue. I don't think you can. You can definitely say that every one of these avenues, will create so much revenue that can be broken down into their own businesses and be extremely successful. So it's amazing. And like we said, to kind of end it, just remember, every small step like this, that to most people might not seem like the biggest deal, It's a great step, a great stepping stone for Tesla to take that next leap. And when that big change that changes the industry over and over happens, it seems like it comes out of nowhere, but you can be educated and know that these are the steps that Tesla has been taking um, in order to make that happen, in order to make the big changes, the world changing, or world changing decisions happen. So for us that are into that kind of stuff, it's always cool to see, and it's always cool to keep up and see how the story unfolds, and to be educated to make any other decisions you may make based on Tesla, the company. Always do your own research. Always double check your own stuff. But I'm just here to provide some context in case you were curious. So thank you. Have a good one. Peace.